Hello, good morning and good evening, depending on where you're dialing in from. I am Jo Juliana Turnbull, and also known as SEO Joe Blogs in the industry, and today we have Turn Digi Australia. I'm really pleased and excited to announce that we have four great speakers sharing their tips here at Turn Digi. We have Amanda King, Shonavee Simpson-Anderson, Julia Munder, and Rebekah Dunne. So thank you very much for everyone for joining us today. We have this live stream to YouTube and we have four great speakers. So please do ask any questions live. Everyone will be giving a chance to have live Q&A. And also, if you want to get involved with Turn Digi in the future, and if you like the videos, please click a like and subscribe to our channel. Turn Digi is an online conference, and it's the aim really is to connect those that are working in digital, especially when it was during the pandemic, but also those that can't travel to other conferences. We want to be able to support entrepreneurs, and also we have a wide range of speakers dialing in from international, from different countries, and also giving actionable tips. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Shonavee Simpson-Anderson, who's going to talk to us about how to write good SEO content faster. So over to you, Shonavee.
All right. Hey, thank you, Jo, for introducing me and also for organizing this incredible event. You've been awesome the whole way through. Just going to quickly give you guys a little bit of an introduction about me. My name is Shonavee Simpson-Anderson. I'm currently the SEO strategist at Firewire Digital and a PhD of Cultural Studies candidate at the University of Newcastle. I've worked in digital for about 8 years now, and I've worked across a whole range of industries, including solar, arcade games, general gaming, coffee roasting, book publishing, property development. I've done a lot of writing, done a lot of stuff. So that's me there. And before we get started, I do also want to just be upfront and just give you a brief overview of who's probably going to benefit most from my 10 minutes up here. So this talk is not aimed at experienced copywriters. It's very much aimed at copywriting newbies, in-house or freelance marketers or SEOs who are struggling with writing content, or marketers and SEOs who have clients that want to write their own content, but they need a little bit of help to do that. So this process, it doesn't use any paid tools, which makes it pretty easy for anyone to just get started with SEO copywriting. Or if you're just someone who thinks that you generally suck at writing, but you have to do it anyway, you could be a small business owner or a startup, whatever it may be, that is the demographic that I'm speaking to today. So if you're here and that doesn't apply to you, I apologize sincerely, but hopefully you still get a tip or two out of this. So moving on, what is the problem? The problem that a lot of businesses and more broadly the digital industry faces when it comes to producing content, and particularly writing, is a two-part problem. The first part is that everyone is taught how to write, so writing itself is an undervalued skill. However, the second part, the way we are taught to write throughout our education, whether that's at school or university level, is completely antithetical to writing in the working world. And I really feel like this is my favorite tweet. I really feel like it encapsulates the problem pretty succinctly there. So the result that we have is that there's a lot of people out there who are writing a lot of content that it just isn't performing. And because that is because of the way that we are taught to write throughout our education, which is all about elaboration. So you need to fill absurd word counts, paragraphs need to be at least 4 to 5 sentences long, you have to synthesize your writing, all of that kind of stuff. Whereas writing for websites, for digital marketing, for blogs, even when we're aiming for really high word counts, the goal is to make digestible chunks of information. We want to target specific questions or queries that align with the user intent, and we want to use short sentences, succinct paragraphs, basically the complete opposite of everything you learned in English. So I really wanted to talk about this because I see this struggle in so many places, and I see a lot of resistance to fixing it as well. And the fix is easy. You need process. Process is the number one thing that I find lacking among businesses and professionals who are struggling with their writing. So here I am to provide one, which you can use as it is, or you can tweak it to suit your particular needs or tools that you might be using. And I just want to say as well that there's nothing special or revolutionary about this process at all. It simply streamlines the stages of producing writing for online platforms to remove the struggle that we all have with the blank page, right? By integrating keyword research with building out your page outline. And that becomes the key, because once you have a page outline, all you really need to do is to respond to each section. So now for the process, I don't use anything fancy. Whenever I train new copywriters or I create templates to help out my clients, I keep it very basic because firstly, I don't want to overwhelm anybody with too many things, too many moving parts, too many tools. But I also want them to be able to take this process, and I want you to be able to take this process and make it your own. Build it out with the tools that you really love or techniques that are unique to you. Okay. So the 3 tools that I use as your foundation, I recommend using Google Ads Keyword Planner. I recommend using Google Search, which, yes, that is a tool. And I also use ask.com. So I used to use Answer the Public instead of this tool, but the free version of that has become a lot more restricted now. So I've moved to this one. And just a note with Keyword Planner as well, it is free to use, but you do need to have an ads account, which you can set all of that up in Keyword Planner tool, like on that platform, and you just need a website to finish the setup. So that's your only hurdle. And before you get into this process, you will also need a primary keyword. So if you try to approach this and you don't have one of those, go get a primary keyword first, come back to the process. So step 1, very obvious. Open up your document. Now we're going to do all of our work in one document. So just whatever you use, Google Docs, Desktop Word, Notepad, whatever your preference. Open that up and add your primary keyword just straight to the top. Step 2 is you're going to go to Keyword Planner and you're going to click on Discover New Keywords. It has a little light bulb on it. And pop in your primary keyword and any variations that you can think of that primary keyword. So, for example, if your primary keyword is piglet jumpers, add in jumpers for piglets, purple jumpers for piglets, etc. Anything that's relevant and it's really a variation on your primary keyword. And also, before I forget, you should also check your search parameters. So on Keyword Planner tool, the default for an Australian user is going to be 12 months of keyword data based on Australia-wide queries. So if those parameters don't suit you, just make sure that you are using parameters that are going to be relevant for you. All right, and from the keywords that come back, just start selecting out your secondary keywords that are relevant to your piece of content. We're going to put in about 4 to 6 of these. If you're unsure about which keywords to choose, the simplest and least complicated way of making that decision is to look for longer phrases with medium to low competition. So this isn't going to have words that have the highest search volumes, but we're looking to target users who are going to click on your content and in some cases convert. So it's about more than just targeting the biggest numbers of users. All right, your next step is you're just going to pop over to Google Search and put in your primary keyword, wait for the results to come up and scroll to the bottom of your search results page and have a look at what comes up under related search queries. So the main idea about going here is you're going to see what a search engine sees as being related to your primary keyword, and that's important. But you're also going to start seeing if you're on the right track with the secondary keywords that you've already selected. And you're going to start seeing some intent come through as well. So if your primary keyword didn't bring up enough click on the next most relevant keyword under related searches and see what else comes up. And just do this as many times as you need to. You want to try and get about at least 4 of these, or just add in as many as you see as relevant. The next stop is going to be assessing user intent. So this is really important so that you understand what the angle of your content is going to be. So you've got your queries, you've got keywords, and that should provide enough information for you to start understanding what that user intent is going to be. So I want you to have a look at these keywords and then ask yourself the following questions. Are they looking for information to help solve a problem? Then intent is informational. Are they looking for a product to help solve their problem? Then intent is transactional. Are they looking to go somewhere else to solve a problem? Then intent is going to be navigational. And it can also be a mix of any of these as well. So maybe they're looking to go somewhere to buy a product to solve their problem. Maybe they're looking for information to make a purchase. So you can also have mixed intent as well. So this is a really important step because it's going to help you when it comes to understanding questions and creating your sections. So just pop in what you think the user intent is going to be at this point as well. All right, step 5 is question time. This is where we look at alsoasked.com and the people also asked section of Google search. So we want to check both of these areas. So because while alsoasked.com or other similar tools like that will show you a lot of the same questions or long tail phrases as what Google search people also asked will, it doesn't necessarily show you which questions that the search engine views as most relevant to what you're searching for. And we want to know that information. That's going to be important. And we also want to target those questions and queries then for SERP features. So it's really important to check Google search as well as a tool. The other part of that is we also... Oh, yeah.
Hey, sorry, Shonavee. Just wondering if you can expand this part a bit more because I couldn't see it on the live version that big.
Is this the presentation?
If the presentation, yes, if you can make that slide a little bit bigger.
I can definitely try. Whoop.
Oh, so yeah, that one is fine. We can see that one, yeah, bigger, but then the words are bigger.
Oh, okay, I see. So it's the actual words on the slide that are...
It may be, but just to re-emphasize about what you're saying about your document, just for the readers, as we can't see the slide that well. You were talking about primary keywords and then your secondary keywords around the different variations.
Yes. Yeah, so primary keyword, variations, secondary keywords, and then we've got Google people also searched, so or related searches, which is at the bottom. And then intent, I don't know if you can see it any bigger while I've got it here.
No, for some reason it's not as any bigger, but I think if you can, yeah, just expand on that to the audience, and that would be great. I don't know why we cannot see it as well. The slide after, yes, we can see very, very well.
Yep.
Oh yes, that's good. Thank you.
That's better? Okay.
Yes, good. Thank you. Sorry to jump in there. I'll leave now.
No, that's fine. All right, so we talked about intent. We're talking about Google search. People also asked. All right, so we want to look at both the Google search section and we also want to look at the tool because we want to know what the search engine finds most relevant in relation to your primary keyword. But we also want to start finding relevant sources of information and trusted links that you can link out to from your own content. So while also asked will give you a lot of questions that you can use and a lot of the same questions from Google search people also asked, it doesn't necessarily show you the questions that are going to be most relevant or where to find answers to them. But it will be useful for finding ideas for your sections and your subsections that you'll use to create a page outline. So this part is just like a hard and fast information dump. Start with Google's PAA, copy and paste the questions that are most relevant to your primary keyword and user intent, and include the answers and the URLs in your document. Okay, so that way you can refer back to that information later. You don't need to go looking for it again. Then go to alsoask.com and copy and paste relevant questions and phrases that match your primary keyword and your user intent, and then just pop those into your document too. And just keep those two sections separate. All right, don't worry if you're doubling up here, just copy and paste. And as you copy and paste these questions into your document from alsoask.com, try and do it in a logical order and start to formulate what your sections of the page outline are going to be, and indent any that you see it being subsections. All right, so once you've copied and pasted all the relevant questions and phrases in, review the order that you've put them in and make any changes that you think fits. So you're not only creating your page outline at this point, but you are also creating a structure that's going to automatically direct your writing towards creating digestible chunks of information, which is what we really want. Those chunks of information are going to be specifically targeting some SERP features, which is also what we want. And they're also going to be logically sequenced for you to tell the story that you think fits the user intent. And that's really important as well. But on top of all of this, and this is what you roughly should be starting to come up with, is you're actually also creating a list of your HTML headings that you're going to use. And they're going to be in order and already including all their most relevant keywords. So you don't have to go back and look at your keyword research and figure out what your headings are going to be. It's already done. We're doing it all in one. So that's it. That's the process. Now all you need to do is go in and answer these questions, build out your sections, polish up the content, and publish it. It's very simple. But, more than a process, everyone always also wants to know about results. So to bring our little session here to a close, I'd also like to share a blog that I have used this process on. So it's this little guy here. And this was done for a client of mine at a previous agency, and it took me about 6 months to convince this client to let me completely rewrite this blog because they only paid for a very small number of hours of work, and they just thought it was going to take way too long. So using this process, I did keyword research, outlined the page, wrote up the content, polished it, and then published it all within about 3 hours. And this page is now the website's top landing page, even beating out the homepage quite often, and is even outperforming some product pages on conversions as well. So if you have a look at that, it's a nice little graph that I've got here. This shows the blog's performance over the past year since I rewrote and published it compared to the previous year. So this new version blog, which I rewrote from scratch, increased quite a number of different metrics. As you can see there, it's got some nice little spikes. But more specifically, it's increased sessions to that page by 339%. It's increased new users to that page by 329%, and increased conversions by 220% a year on. So that is a damn fine return. I was very happy with that. And I guess what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that this can be a really powerful way for you to approach SEO copywriting and writing for your business, but especially for people who are struggling or they're less experienced in writing, and it has potential for return, which is ultimately what we all want. So thank you everyone for joining me. Sorry about the little hiccup on one of my slides, but I look forward to your questions.
Great, thank you very much for that, Shonavee. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know why I was making it really small there. So I wanted to ask you a couple of questions just about those results. First of all, can we share that link of the New South Wales approval for your patio? I found it. Can we share it publicly?
Yeah, you can share it. That's fine.
Yeah, so
do you have it there?
Yeah, it looks. I wanted to ask, how long did it take you to? You said it took you 6 months, first of all, to convince them to do this. Then you did it within 3 hours. how long normally would you bill? Because you run your own business, I understand.
I don't run my own business. I work at another. I work at a digital agency for
Sorry,
someone else.
I was well,
No,
I
it's
was just
good.
thinking that you ran because you acted like it seemed like you took ownership of this. So apologies for that. But it's great that you had such great results. How did you convince this person to first of all implement this, and second of all, how has this helped you with other clients to do more content changes?
So basically, the way I convinced this client to get on board with me was, so I was in charge of doing the monthly reports, and a lot of the data that was being pulled in from Google Search Console was showing that there was a lot of queries for, pergolas, patios, that kind of stuff, with New South Wales council approval. And every month, I'm like, these are your top queries that are coming through. This is what you're being found for, but you're clearly not answering the question. And just every month for about 6 months, I was like, these are your top queries. We need to write this blog. These are your top queries. We need to write this blog. And eventually he just caved because I'm persistent.
Persistence pays off then. So if you were to start from a new client from scratch, how much time would you allocate, I would say, to a content strategy? Because you obviously showed us how to write SEO content faster. You had good results. So what would you do as an agency to bill into clients? How much would you set aside of time?
It's going to depend on how much it's always that's always the answer, isn't it? It depends. It's going to depend on, how much budget they have to set aside, how much content they have existing that needs to be updated, and how much new content they can afford to put out, really. But, also we've seen different studies come through that show that doing more than 4 pieces of content a month doesn't really return much beyond that. So I always say to clients, we need to kind of look at doing, 1 piece of content a month, like a new piece of content, and try and refresh your old content and address any questions that maybe are not addressing properly or not addressing in the way that users are looking for. And in terms of time, it's more about how much we can get them to commit to for that. But at least I would say, like, in terms of building out the strategy, you want to use like 4 to 8 hours, depending on how big it is, on how long it's going to be, like how much time you have to account for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, those are great results, and it's very interesting how you said after 4 articles you didn't actually see much difference, really. We have a question also. Would you review existing content first, or go into new content and answer any standout questions?
Yeah, quick wins. Always go for quick wins. So review existing content is always first up, because if they have any content that's already ranking that you can improve, then you're going to see really quick results from that, rather than produce all new content and then try and get that noticed, try and get people to pay attention to it, and then rank. Because the whole system of content and rankings is a bit of a chicken and an egg situation, where it's like you need users to love your content in order for search engines to rank it, but you need search engines to rank your content so that anyone can find it. So my solution to that is always, write for both, but also, review old content first.
Okay.
Find your quick wins.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. We're going to have Rebekah Dunne just in a few minutes talk about your old content, how to grow your old content. So thank you very much, Shonavee. How can people get hold of you?
You can reach me on Twitter. You might have seen my handle on the last slide there, but also I'm very active on LinkedIn, so you can always message me on there if anyone wants to reach out for anything.
Great. Well, thank you. Well, I'll just share yours in the chat here. And thank you very much for joining us on today's Turn Digi Australia. We now have coming up Amanda King. She will be talking to us about JavaScript SEO for large brands. So I'm going to put us back into the back room, and bring in
Hello. I hope everyone can hear me all right and see the screen as well. Yep, there we go. So JavaScript SEO for enterprises. I'm going to chat about best practices, things to watch out for, and how to navigate them. I'm Amanda, and that is a photo of me on a camel in Mongolia. But I've been in marketing since 2010, analytics since 2012, and CRO and UX since about 2015. I've also ran and executed a digital analytics offering at my last agency. I was agency side for about 8 years in both the United States and Australia. So for those of you listening out for it, yes, this is an American accent, and I'm in Sydney. I'm currently in-house at an enterprise utility company in Australia, always looking for ways to help businesses grow. I've also lived in 3 countries and visited more than 40. So at the moment, with current travel restrictions, I'm a little bit sad at life at the moment, as I'm sure many of us are. But just to kind of go through what we'll be chatting about, just a friendly reminder about how Google processes and understands JavaScript, as well as the internet in general, things to watch out for, and then best practices and considerations, particularly when looking at JavaScript at an enterprise level. A bit of a morning wake up and an evening pick me up for everyone. That is how Google works. It is a toddler on a sugar high. If you make its life easy, it'll keep running around and finding things. But if you make it challenging, it'll hit a wall, throw a bit of a tantrum, and may not come back, particularly in the case of JavaScript. And JavaScript is a wall. Let's not kind of bandy that around. It is an impediment to Google crawling your website, because Google has to crawl twice to see the page content. And one thing that I have to remind people of, that I think sometimes people forget, is that Google actually spends a massive amount of money to crawl the internet in the server farms that they have. And when something is JavaScript, it actually costs Google more money, because they need to crawl the page in HTML once, and then they need to put it in a queue to render the JavaScript. And with rendering the JavaScript as well, the last time I checked, Google actually has a render limit in place. So it will actually only crawl the first 5 seconds of the JavaScript render. So if the website takes longer than 5 seconds to load, even with JavaScript, then there's no guarantee that Google actually sees past that 5-second mark. And generally, scripts and libraries and frameworks can be super heavy, meaning that it takes up a lot of just space in your website, and on Google's time. So some things to watch out for. Generally, if you have JavaScript on your website, particularly at an enterprise level, you will know. It won't be something that is like, oh no, I didn't realize we had JavaScript. It's like, no, we've hired a ton of React developers, or we have a bunch of Angular developers. People have specialties. So it would be very unlikely, and particularly these days, that you would have JavaScript on your website and not know about it. But some of my favorite tools to find details about the JavaScript that's implemented on your website are webpagetest.org. There's the DevTools extension on Chrome, just the straight browser console, as well as builtwith.org, which will list out all of the different libraries and will occasionally give you a history of implementation as well. ViewSource versus Inspect, and DiffChecker, which I've only recently refound online to help see the difference between the rendered page and the source, as well as Google's mobile-friendly test, which will give you basically how Google sees the website. And one thing that I'll keep coming back to here is open communication. With JavaScript especially, you want to talk to your teams. You want to know what's going on. So if there's talk of a rebuild or a redesign, performance optimization, template updates, those are all kind of encoded language for we're potentially changing something about the way the web page is built. And that's really a cue for you to come into the conversation and kind of insert yourself and be like, hey, we should be considering the page performance or looking at what we can do from a JavaScript perspective to make both people and bots experiences a lot easier. Sorry, I keep having trouble with progressing the slides for some reason. And with those conversations, be proactive as well. Monitor Core Web Vitals, which I believe that rollout has now been pushed back to August, if I'm remembering correctly, from June, using Crux, or sometimes in Google Search Console. Often, if you're enterprise level, you will have those Core Web Vitals reports in your Google Search Console account. You also want to learn what you can about the JavaScript library or framework that you're using. And it's probably React. The majority of JavaScript libraries used are actually React. And then the other side of it is making sure that you understand what your own internal processes are in terms of what your release schedule or your dev team's sprint schedule is, what the change management process looks like. There's a business case that you need for changes, or any ways that you can support those teams in creating stronger business cases. So the way that I typically tackle JavaScript, again, like I said, you want to talk to your teams because there are potentially some low-hanging fruit. I hate that phrase, but it's a term that I can't get away from. You want to kind of talk to your team about the easy things that they may be able to do relatively quickly that will help the way that Google sees the page, right? So there are some instances where, depending on the library or the framework that you use, you can actually force critical content to render in the source. I know that's something that you can do with Angular. So even if you're just getting your developer to put in the meta title and the meta description in the HTML in the first pass, that's better than nothing. Keeping the images small in size. I know I've had to have somewhat lengthy conversations with my designers about keeping images small rather than 5 megs. There's also Core Web Vitals, but in particular first input delay and cumulative layout shift. So first input delay being how long it takes for the server to see things, and then cumulative layout shift in terms of how frequently things change on the page. And then there's also URL consistency if you're in a situation like mine where you have a pre-order and a product page. Making sure that those are the same definitely helps our visibility. And then just a bit of context for everyone about cumulative layout shift and why you can also argue that it's important for accessibility to make sure that it is pinned down, because there can be some serious consequences to the user journey if cumulative layout shift isn't managed properly. I'm not going to read through this whole quote, but I'll let you guys have a read through it. And I will also make sure that I post this up on SlideShare later after this presentation as well. My first step with JavaScript in large companies is to mitigate. So doing everything in your control to manage what you can control. So making sure that images are properly sized, consolidating or reducing third-party scripts. So talking to your marketing team, asking if they really need that TikTok tracker, does that really matter? And improving your performance in other ways that don't directly involve JavaScript, and also making sure to add secondary and rich content to key pages. Different types of media, educationally based articles. We know that these are things that Google looks at from an EAT perspective, so expertise, authority, and trust perspective. if you really want to take a deep dive into it, you can look at Google's quality rater guidelines, which they have publicly released. And something to bear in mind, it's rarely simple. You can't just say, just use a different library or stop using JavaScript. That'll lose people jobs. Reducing the number of tracking scripts can be political, and just updating the code base can literally take years. And so these are the kinds of conversations that tend to be ones that you chip away in the background, working with developers to understand the hydration process with your JavaScript so that you're chunking it out into smaller pieces rather than having it load all at once. That often will make the perceived page load time faster. You can also look at minimizing and bundling CSS and reviewing all bundle sizes. Fonts are often a major consideration, and if they're not pre-rendered, can actually take up quite a bit of lag time. There are also, you can go even further with pre-rendering and do subsetting, which is where you're looking at pre-rendering but on a character level, and then looking at the deprecated JavaScript or unused libraries, as well as server-side rendering and static site generation. Basically, you want to become an advocate for your developers and find ways to make their lives easier in the long run. And that is effectively the process that I go through when looking at JavaScript. You talk, you learn, you listen, you find ways to mitigate, and then if that mitigation still needs to be taken further, you look at minimizing. And that is enterprise level SEO in a nutshell. You can find me on Twitter at Amanda EC King, but I am definitely not on there very frequently. So I would say hit me up on LinkedIn or LinkedIn to get in touch and ask any questions outside of this. But I'm looking forward to your questions here. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Amanda. So yeah, actually I had a question for you when you were talking about, I've got your slides here in another computer, just about minimizing JavaScript, and just in terms of, you said obviously talk to your team. So how realistic, is it to be able to minimize the JavaScript? Because we all need JavaScript obviously for, different elements of the page. So do you have a case study of if you can't say the brand, that's fine, but if you have a case study of a client where you were able to get, 90 out of 100 on Core Web Vitals, or you reduced JavaScript by significantly?
Yeah, so I can say that the company that I'm currently at, Optimised, we spent about 8 months looking to rehydrate and minimize our JavaScript, and we reduced the page load time from 20 seconds to about 11 on average. So there's still obviously room to improve. There's always room to improve, but that was a pretty significant milestone for us to be able to get that done.
And how long, over what time period was that?
That was about an 8 to 10 month process all up.
Okay. So with all the enterprise JavaScript SEO, with using JavaScript in these large companies, just to manage expectations, how long would you say it takes from when you raise the issue to when it's completed?
Typically for me, from when I raise an issue to when it's actually addressed, is probably about 6 to 8 months. It is something that, especially as there are lots of different projects going on, people have lots of different priorities, particularly in an agile world, which is what Optimised lives in. It can take a while, which is why, for example, I started having conversations with our development team kind of basically immediately after the 2019 iPhone launch, in order to get changes implemented for the 2020 iPhone launch. and that actually ended up increasing our organic visibility year on year incrementally by about 35%. So it's a process, but it's definitely a conversation and a process worth going through. Patience is key in enterprise.
Great, thank you. We will remember that. And just one last question. I don't know if the other women in the audience had any questions, but I wanted to ask if your site is ready. Is Optisite ready for Core Web Vitals?
It is a work in progress. We are definitely working towards it. We started having that conversation probably back in January, and it is something that we are steadily implementing and looking to as metrics. At the moment, I would say we are probably about 60% there. There are pieces of implementation that will be going in August, so we'll be towing the line, but it's been a process that we've prepared for. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much for sharing that. I will keep that also in mind when working with large enterprise clients. Thank you very much, Amanda, for joining us on Turn Digi today. And we also have two great speakers that will be sharing their tips. So if you've enjoyed the video so far, click a nice little like button and subscribe to our channel. Now I'm very happy to announce that we have Rebekah Dunne, who will be talking to us about optimizing your old content to generate traffic. So touching or going into deeper into the topic that Shonavee mentioned earlier in Turn Digi. So without further ado, I will pass over to Rebekah.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Wow, goodness, so many good talks so far. Oh, my goodness, such a lot to follow up on. All right, I'm just going to share my screen and then we can get started.
So while Rebekah is sharing her screen, I also want to just give a quick overview. We're at Turn Digi, an international event. So Rebekah is tuning in from the West Midlands. We have Shonavee coming in from Newcastle in Australia. Amanda is in Sydney, and we have Julia, who will be on next, dialing in from York, and I'm dialing in from Barcelona. So if any of our speakers or any of our audience would like to share where they are, please drop that in the chat. So without further ado, I'll pass over to Rebekah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yep, I really hope you can see my screen. I have had difficulties at other presentations. It's been really embarrassing. So hopefully this all goes well. So, yep, my name is Rebekah. This is a picture of my cat who will most likely make an appearance. He always does. I've been working in digital marketing for over 6 years now. I've worked both agency and in-house, where I've covered things like SEO, PPC, social media. I started in content writing and I've sort of gone full circle, and now I'm back into content writing because that's really where my heart is. At the moment, I'm working at Sweet Digital as the content executive, and I'm also the news writer at Search Engine Journal. I do speak very fast. I drink a lot of coffee. So hopefully you can understand everything I'm saying. If not, follow up with me and I'll be happy to chat in more detail. A little bit of a fun fact about me that's not fun for me at all is that I haven't won a single board game at all this year. And I play a lot of board games. It's a really sad moment for me. So now you know my truth. But what I really want to talk to you about today is how to optimize your old content to generate more traffic, which has already been touched on today. So it's fantastic that I can sort of go into this with you in a bit more detail. So the first question, and a question I'm sure probably a lot of clients would ask, is why even bother? If content's evergreen, why do we need to keep updating it and tweaking it? So I found this piece of research from Pointed Copywriting, and it says that in general, on average, it takes just shy of 4 hours to ideate, research, and write a blog post. And I find it really interesting that over the years, the amount of time it takes has gotten higher and higher, which to me suggests that there's a lot more competition out there. You need to be really offering something really amazing, which then takes more time. I also did my own poll in 2020 and got very similar results. So 34% of people say it takes between 2 and 4 hours to write a post, and 30% 4 to 6 hours it took them. So depending on sort of how much knowledge you have of the topic already, how much research is required, the kind of post it is, it can take anything between 2 to 6 hours. Another reason why you should update old content is that great content is stolen a lot. So this is an article written by PlagiaShield, and it says that for an SaaS blog that has around 1,000 articles, 600 of them aren't unique anymore. And I spoke to the guy who built this site, and it's not even a case of, you know, a few percent, 3 or 4% is stolen. Most of the articles are stolen. And I know that Google can tell who posted it first, but it doesn't really help when a lot of your target audience is going to another place to read the content that you spent hours creating. So if you update your content and keep adding value to it, then that will keep people coming to yours rather than the people that stole the content from you. Another reason is because behaviors and preferences change. We all remember the time, or maybe just people who've been in the industry for ages like me, remember the time when GIFs were a massive thing in blog posts. They were really shoved in there. And now it's a little bit cringy to look back on. Since GIFs, we've sort of moved on to memes. And at the moment, there's nothing really taking center stage in terms of cringiness. So it's exciting to see where that's going to go next. And finally, why you should bother updating old content is because Google is constantly changing, and it is constantly giving us more opportunities to show up differently. So in 2014, we had featured snippets. 2015, people also ask boxes. 2019, the BERT update. And this year, as has been mentioned, Core Web Vitals update. So lots of opportunities to keep your evergreen content working hard. Convinced? I hope so, but if not, I'm just going to share you 2 examples of projects that I've taken on recently where we've updated old content and the impact it's had. So the first one was to tweak old pages and turn those into a hub page. So we have a fitness client, and there was a lot of content that still performs all right, but not as well as I knew it could. Reading through it, I thought we could do so much more with this. So when gyms reopened, I wanted to create a welcome back to the gym pack. And it sort of took the structure of, you know, a quick header, really small amount of intro content, a call to action, and then we did 9 pieces that we just tweaked. We kept the main structure, we sort of added in content where it was a bit thin, and we also tweaked the tone to make it into more of a, you're coming back to the gym, these are the things that you should know. And then we ended with another call to action. We also shared it on Facebook purely because we have quite a nice audience on Facebook and they're quite interactive. So we did that. And then also the Clio helped us with the PR side of things, which was awesome. So in this hub page, we covered things like health, well-being, reasons why you should go back to the gym, education, advice on certain practices, and the importance of forward planning. And in total, it took us about 14 hours to do, which I'll come back to further on. So we had some pretty good results. The hub page actually replaced a previous piece that had been the top performer for 6 months. So I outdid myself there. So that's where there's no period or year-on-year comparison because that was a fresh page. But all these other ones, as you can see, we had some really good results from. The ones that were older than a year, we had, you know, just shy of 1,000 for piece 3, increase in traffic. And yeah, that's the rest of them. So piece 6, I think was, actually piece 5 was the most successful in terms of traffic, over 4,500% increase. So what? Traffic's great, but it doesn't really mean much if they're not getting through the funnel and they're not making a purchase or signing up. So going back to my original point of it taking just shy of 4 hours, I based this on 3 hours just to sort of round it down. Took us 14 hours to update these pages and create the hub page. It would have taken us 27 if we went by 3 hours per post. And the hub page got us 29 assisted conversions with a value of a good chunk, and it also got us some last conversions as well. The other pieces that weren't performing in terms of assisted conversions before started to again. So that sort of proves to the client that it's, it's a welcome backpack that you sort of are aiming for beginners, or people that have been out of the game for a while, but it actually does help to increase revenue. The second project that we did was involved competitor analysis and improvements. So they had loads of beginner guides that the rankings were dropping, traffic wasn't there. We just wanted to sort of try and make it work a little bit harder and get it back to where it was before. So we identified the guides that we wanted to improve. This was a year-long project, so we did a fair few guides for them. We analysed the top 10 ranking pages, and I mean in depth. We read every single one and we dissected them and tried to figure out why they were performing better than us. We reviewed EAT practices, we carried out fresh search term research, and what we found was our guides were very overly salesy, especially for a beginner's guide. So we removed that as much as we could. We moved it to the end where we made a very small amount of recommendations of products that you could buy. And we had mixed results for this one. I haven't included all of the pieces that we did because there was a fair few, but I wanted to really show that sometimes with these projects, you're not always going to get the results you're looking for. So it's so important when you're updating our content to also have a plan B of what to do in response. Some did really well. Some didn't do so great in terms of traffic. So we then looked at assisted and last click. And as you can see, even the traffic went down, assisted and last click conversions went up. So we could go back to the client and say, okay, traffic's down, but the people that are coming are actually a lot more qualified and a lot more ready to buy. So yeah, I think that was I just really wanted to make that point that sometimes things won't go fully your way, but to have a backup plan as well. So what have we learned? Just because content is evergreen, it doesn't mean that you don't need to keep working on it. I have a little metaphor of it being like a plant, and you have to water it to keep it thriving. With so many opportunities constantly coming about, why not make your piece that you spent hours on before work harder? And it also takes a lot less time, which also means a higher ROI because time is money, essentially. And yeah, as I said before, not every piece of content is going to get the results you're hoping for. So always make sure that you have a next step and make this clear when you're pitching these project ideas to your clients so that their expectations are managed. Thank you.
That was great, Rebekah. There was loads of examples that you gave there about what happened, and it's really important as well just to manage client expectations and also to show that it doesn't always work maybe as you'd expect, but to look at the last slide that you said about having the users that were coming were people that you actually wanted to come to the site.
Yes, yeah.
So I had a question for you for this. I mean, you were very clear with your time. You said the time it took to tweak the old content and create hub pages, it was 14 hours. Mm-hmm. So that was great. How much time did you have to spend convincing your client to do this? Or were they really on board at the beginning?
We're very lucky, actually. We do have a lot of trust from our clients, so we don't necessarily have to convince all of them. This one, because of lockdown and everything that entailed, this was something that we did in addition to help them, because I think that's really important in this industry. When things go tough for clients, we don't abandon them. So we did the usual work for them, but this was sort of on top. So they were on board with that anyway.
Yeah, well, that's it was nice that you did that as like an add-on. I think that these results would show that it's something that you can sell into other clients. So have you done that because of this work? You've said to other clients, oh, hey, let's look at your old content.
We have pitched it to another client who were very interested in it. We just feel like it's a sort of a not right now thing. There's lots of other things that we can do that will get us much quicker results, and with this particular client, we're not 100% sure what the results will be yet. So we want to sort of, it's on the list, but it's a little bit further down the line.
Okay, great. And I don't know, Julia or Shonavee, if you guys have any questions also for Rebekah, because I have loads, so I don't want to dominate.
No, just from my own experience working with brands, recycling old content, especially during the pandemic, when you didn't have as much resource, or company had to make sure they keep the business structures lean, that really helped. And I've seen a lot of SEO improvements this way as well. So I can only support that and say it definitely works for clients.
Awesome. I really think as well it's important, if you've done all this work to update your own content, if it is possible, use other platforms to advertise it. So share it socially, hand it over to the PR team. Some people actually, we used to, at a former agency, we used to advertise blog posts on Google Ads as well to target people that didn't know the brand but had questions to answer. So yeah, look to other platforms as well as your usual SEO.
Great, thank you. And I just wanted to actually dive into what you actually did about tweaking the old content and creating hub pages. So you not only tweaked the blog post, but then you created a hub page for like welcome back to the gym, or
so yeah, I call it a hub page. We did it as a blog post, but I called it a hub page because it has all of those internal links to the other pages, and it was purely a timing issue that we did that, but it worked really well. Yeah. I'm trying to think back because it was quite a while ago. I'm pretty sure we would have done fresh research in terms of search terms. Generally, I would do a people also ask search as well, using SEO Minion, which is a tool I absolutely adore.
Was it SEO Minion?
Yes, yeah. It's a plugin that you use on Chrome, and it just pulls out loads of stuff, but I always use it to pull out people also ask boxes, and it shows you the question, the answer, the URL that's ranking for it, and then tons of other information that I don't use.
Oh, great. I didn't know about that.
It's really
a good one. And looking at what you tweaked in your old content, it was the header, the intro content, the call to action, and then you actually had the rest of the content in there. It looks like the paragraph and the call to action. So it looks like you redid the whole page.
Well, the hub page was created from scratch, but when we the old content, it was pretty much a case of, this is fantastic content, it's really useful, but it's not written for pandemic times. So a lot of it was just changing the tone a little bit to refer back to, why you've had a break from the gym, essentially. So it didn't take that long to rewrite. There were some that were quite thin, that we hadn't touched. So that's where a lot of the time came as well. I'd say most of the time came from researching search terms and then bulking out the more thinner pieces. Changing the tone was actually a really quick job.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Rebekah. And how can everyone get hold of you?
Twitter's probably the best one, although you will probably get a lot of Gilmore Girls GIFs. I'm on LinkedIn, but I'm not on it very often. I do also have a blog called Rebekah Writes, but that's purely for, I'm a fiction writer as well, so that's purely for fun. So you can check out that if you want, but if not, then Twitter's the way to get me.
Okay, great. Well, I'll share your Twitter link in here.
Sorry?
Send us fiction links.
Oh, yeah, I need to get back on it. I haven't updated it since November because there's been so much work on, but I have so many ideas of things to add in. So yeah, I'll send it over.
And you're also speaking at Brighton SEO, aren't you?
I am, yeah, about content audits and how just trying to move it away a little bit from it being so much about the SEO side of things and more about the actual content side of things.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, yeah, please, I'll just message you and then we can share that also in the chat here. Thank you very much, Rebekah. And now we have Julia, who is talking about a topic that is very close to my heart as well. It's about how to work in marketing without being a specialist. I'm sure many of us are aware of people telling us what you should do. You need to focus on one particular avenue. And Julia is here to tell us that, no, don't listen to other people. Julia has over 10 years experience working in digital marketing, and she can go into more details about what she's done and how you can still develop your career in marketing without specializing. So I will pass over to Julia.
Cool, thank you. Right, first bit about me. Hi, I'm Julia. I'm a global brand strategist and marketing consultant, and I'm currently holding a position as International Marketing Director at Maxwell Scott. We are a luxury leather goods manufacturer, and we are a purely e-commerce focused business. And As Show said, I've got 10 years experience in e-commerce, digital marketing, and international communications. I'm originally from Germany, so if you hear a bit of a weird accent, that's probably it. And fun fact about me, I'm the top billed cast in a horror film called Book of Monsters on Amazon Prime. So if you want to check that out. Today, I'm going to talk about how to work in marketing without being a specialist. But before we start, I'd like to define what I mean with not an expert or not a specialist. I don't mean anything negative with that. It just means you're not working in a specific field of marketing. So you are not an SEO, PPC, CRO, content, email marketing specialist, but you are rather a general marketeer with a very broad knowledge, and you're focusing within your business or the agency on the overall picture. So let's call you a general specialist. And why is it important that we talk about this? Because often marketing executives or managers are, as I said, not experts in one specific field. And when working with agencies or freelancer or even people within your in-house teams, that can become a problem, especially when targets aren't met. Because then you get confronted with often the sentence, but we are the experts, or you are not an expert. And a lot of people I spoke to over the years, and including myself, that's the moment when your imposter syndrome kicks in. You're like, oh, okay, maybe they know better. Maybe I don't know. So today I want to talk about how to turn the jack of all trades, master of none, that old negative idiom, into your superpower and really use being that general specialist as your advantage. So let's go right in. I've got 5 actionable tips to share, and hopefully it will be of use for everyone working in-house as a marketing assistant, executive manager, whichever level it applies to. So the first actionable tip I'd have is trust in your brand. So as a general marketeer, in-house or within an agency, you are responsible, or you're the driving force behind getting traffic, getting customers to decide. Your goal is to improve the brand recognition and drive the purchase intent, and at the end drive ROI as well. So you know the brand or your company best. So trust in that, knowing your brand, and stick to your core values. So whatever everyone says, that is your specialty. You know your brand, and nobody knows the company better than you do. The second tip is trust in your knowledge. So a jack of all trades are masters of learning. Often we are creative thinkers, problem solvers, and we can combine the analytical with the creative side of things, and that is your strength. So as long as you keep learning and acquire all relevant knowledge, that is your superpower in itself. Because if you keep up with all the changing technology, listen to talks like this, events like this, and you keep that learning up, you can really become this hybrid marketeer that combines everything. And also ask questions when working with freelancers or developers. So if you don't understand something, say about JavaScript, it's a really difficult and in detail topic, ask your developers, how can we do this? Ask your SEO agency questions, or your PPC agency. If you don't understand something, you need to understand it, because you are at the head of all of these departments. You need to combine them. So you need to understand it in detail, and there's no harm in asking questions. And also it encourages your staff to learn. So if you show that not knowing it and asking the question isn't actually anything bad, that encourages a really great culture of learning within your business. And also CEOs and the greatest entrepreneurs have often been generalists. So keep learning. Actionable point 3, really embrace technology. So technology, as we all know, is the driving force behind digital. So you need to understand the latest tech. So acquire technical knowledge. It will also help you with your creative campaigns. So if you understand the technical constraints, say of JavaScript, what does it mean for SEO? Or how can I implement a video on a web page? You do not need to be the video producer, but you need to understand, how do I implement video, or how do I write a script? How does the production site work? Same with social media tracking. How do I track it? Do you really need to care for these details and try to brush up your knowledge on the latest technologies? I'm currently looking into social media and TikTok, so that the learning again never stops. Then point 4, understand the data. This is really important. You need to embrace data and analytics. I know it might be boring, but you need to understand things like Google Analytics, AdWords, SEMrush. Really drill down into those numbers, because all these findings you see in your analytics and in your general data will help you optimize your campaigns, apply your findings to consumer behavior, and drive that traffic and increase conversions at the end of the day. Also, you understand the engagement. How do I engage people? Where do they go on the website? But most importantly, if you understand the data, you will be able to set KPIs and expectations about ROI for your outside agencies or your in-house teams, SEO, PPC, because the numbers don't lie. And if you understand them, you can question, you can ask the right questions or understand why things aren't working and set your expectations, because a set of data can be interpreted in very different ways. So if you understand it and if you know how to interpret it, then nobody can tell you otherwise. And you know if it isn't working, then, as I said, the numbers don't lie. You know it's just not working. And the last actionable point is probably the most important one, is connect all channels. I've always said you are the glue in your business. So the jack of all trades are the glue that connect everything. They connect all the dots and they know how everything works together. So this diverse skill set really helps you to be able to connect all channels. You know how they work together. How does PPC influence SEO, for example? How does the JavaScript on the website, I have to come back to Amanda's great talk, how does that influence speed and SEO performance of a web page? How does the content, what influence has content on the organic traffic? So as long as you understand all moving parts within the business, and that you don't need to be an expert, it just needs to be that general understanding and that way of learning and wanting to learn more, then you understand how each channel work together, how to influence each other, and you just completely understand the whole marketing ecosystem. And that's a great thing, because you can cover many roles for the business, and it's a great attitude to have, especially in like startup cultures or SMEs, because often these companies don't have the budget yet to hire a content writer or hire an email marketing expert. So you can fill in and grow it to a point that they then can hire something. So as a generalist, you actually have a really important position within the business. So all of that you can turn into your superpowers. So the key takeaways from this is trust in your brand. You are the best brand advocate or advocate for the company. Do you know best? Trust in your knowledge. Don't get intimidated by specialist knowledge. Don't get intimidated by technical terms that you don't understand. Ask the question, because you know as much and you know more about probably a broad spectrum of marketing. Never stop learning. It's really important to always keep your finger on the pulse, especially in digital. There's always something new out there, so keep up learning. Embrace technology. Understand your tech. It's the backbone of everything. So understand a bit of HTML. Again, has to do with the learning. Really embrace it. Same with data and analytics. Know your numbers. Understand your analytics. There's really great courses out there where you can understand what all these graphs mean, and then connect the dots. As I said, you are the glue between all these different departments. So connect all the channels and look at the whole picture. And this is really your superpower, to look at this whole picture. And then last but not least, that's a bit of my motto: dream big. So have a really great vision as a marketer. It always works. You need to aim high, start small, and then connect the dots. Thank you very much.
That was great. Thank you very much, Julia, for that. I had a question for you just about sort of being a marketer, and I liked how you said, obviously, that you would your brand, trust in your brand. That's you really need to do that. But I would say, you know, when you do get people saying things like, "Oh, but you're not a specialist. You don't understand. You know, go away." What do you do? How do you react to that in a nice way, although you're annoyed inside?
In a nice way. I think you just have to. It's difficult, isn't it? Because at first, when you hear that, you're like, "Oh, I'm really not an expert. Can I say something?" But you should say something, because at the end of the day, as the brand or the company, you are. This sounds harsh, but you're paying them, and you know your brand best. So it needs to work. So you need to respect their opinion, obviously, and always listen to advice. Always know. But if I know it's going completely against brand value or the recommendation that there's just something not right, I think you have the right to say it.
I suppose you've had many experiences of that in the past then with this.
Yes, yeah, because with luxury leather goods, it's quite a specific product. So if you look at our data, say, it looks different to like a general product. So it's very, very specific. And I think especially when you work with a specific product that doesn't find a mainstream audience, it can be quite difficult, because you're like this outlier who doesn't work like 90% of other companies.
So you were talking about educating yourself. So that was I don't know what happened with the mic. Where would you recommend going to sort of get this extra information?
Oh God, there's loads out there now. So Marketing Week is a good one. There's loads of talks like this, for example, out there. Conferences, Brighton SEO, Search Leads, things like that. The general SEO consultancy, marketing blogs, all the trusted marketing sources. Just read as much as you can, or I love podcasts or videos, and try and gain as much knowledge as possible. Also see where is there a lag, where I'm lacking understanding, where can I not connect certain channels, and then try to work into that knowledge. Like I said, hands up, social media is something I really need to brush up my knowledge.
Great, yeah, there's lots of podcasts, like there's a Women in Tech SEO podcast, which is great. I'll let Rebekah and Shonavee, if you have any questions, ask Julia.
One. I was just going to ask, so with being in more of a generalist role and being sort of the person that makes the connections, how important are the soft skills, and what soft skills would you recommend people wanting to take on more of a generalist role have?
That's a really good one. I'd say you need to be really diplomatic. Listening is a great skill. You need to listen to all opinions. Giving constructive feedback. I hate feedback when people say, "Oh, it's just not good." That doesn't help. That doesn't help you. So really, and also trying to connect teams, because you are like this. I'm degrading the role, because you're not a project manager, that you have to have a lot of skills that a project manager has. So no, that's a really good question. I'd say very diplomatic. Listening is a big one. If you listen a lot to people, you understand them better, and then you can connect different teams better.
My question is, sorry, is that my mic? Oh, there's back chat. I'm going to type it into the chat.
Yeah, I think we're all having some technical issues with that. I'm not sure why that is the case. So you're putting in the chat.
Cool.
Great. While Rebekah is just writing that, I wanted to say that there's some great podcasts. Obviously, there's the Women in Tech SEO podcast to listen to. There's a lot of workshops that Women in Tech SEO are doing, and there's obviously those events that you mentioned as well, Julia, like Brighton SEO. Yeah. So Rebekah's asked a question: what advice do you give someone who has experienced the backlash and has imposter syndrome? Good question.
That's a really good and difficult question, because it never really goes away. I think no matter which position you are in, you'll always find yourself in positions or rooms where you think, how did I get here? Why am I here? How did this happen? And you get that kind of imposter syndrome. But I think it's preparing for these moments that you might feel this way, and then always, I think gratitude is a good one. Really practicing, this gratitude, saying I've worked for this, I'm here for a reason, and I'm thankful that I'm here. So that has always worked. Or then these, it sounds so silly, but really these like power posing before talks and events. Love it, tried it all. But I do think it works because it gives you that extra little boost. It's a bit like, coming back to my little acting side project, it's a bit like actors preparing themselves for a role or doing a bit of a speech test. So yeah.
Thank you. That was a fantastic answer. And yes, you do some acting on the side too. That's great. I do some improv. So I want to say thank you very much to Julia, Rebekah, Shonavee, and Amanda for coming on the show today. It was early for some of you, a bit later in the day for others. And thank you to our audience and also the audience that will be viewing this afterwards too. We had some great tips that our authors, that our writers, sorry, our presenters shared. So we will be sending them out in a post-event email. And also I want to say that we've got Turn Digi taking place. We have Turn Digi taking place on June the 10th as well. So this is going to be at 5 p.m. UK time. Let me just share that quickly. We have 3 great speakers, Diana, Heba, and Sylvia. Internal linking, why you can't afford to ignore it. Heba is going to be talking about. She is a freelance consultant, and Sylvia Martin has her own business, and she'll talk about tech SEO foundations. And Diana works at SEMrush, and she's going to talk about how to build a social community. So thank you very much to our speakers and also to our audience and the audience that will be watching us afterwards. If you've liked the video, please click a like. And if you would like to also get involved in Turn Digi in the future, please contact me. I'm SEO Joe Blogs on Twitter. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm just LinkedIn and /J Turnbull. Thank you all for joining us today, and hopefully see you in person soon as well.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Yes.